In 1958, Legos were invented. Crayola introduced the 64 crayon box. NASA was created, and Alaska was about to become a state. The 1959 Chevy models were out in the fall of 1958, and the new models were a radical shift in design by General Motors. Customers were flocking to their local dealership to check them out, and business was good at Dixie Motors, the local Chevy dealer in London, Kentucky. This is the same angle of the picture you just saw. This is the location where Dixie Motors was. Now the corner of the London Community Center, and the buildings for Dixie Motor Company wrapped right around that corner. So on September the 20th, 1958, my father was a 29-year-old car salesman here at Dixie Motors, and my mom was at home with my sister Sheila, age 8, and Jim and John, the twins, age 5, and Mom was 3 months pregnant with me. Also working that day at Dixie Motors was Raymer Brown, nicknamed Tony. He's the grandfather of Laurel County Court Clerk Tony Brown. Raymer Tony Brown was 46 years old, and he and his wife Maud had 3 kids: Joe, age 21, Ted, age 18, and a younger sister named Virginia. Around lunchtime, a customer came in to take a test drive. His name was Kenneth Nicely, 19 years old. He was 10 days away from his 20th birthday. My father waited on Kenneth Nicely that Saturday, and as my dad was about to take Nicely on a test drive, Tony Brown spoke up and said, "JB, go ahead and take your lunch, and I'll handle this one." And so it was that fate intervened, and life for the Brown family was about to change forever. They pulled out of Dixie Motors and headed up the road just a little ways to fill up the car they were test driving with gas. And in 1958, there was a gas station that sat right here where the Dollar General store sits now. After getting gas, they headed north on Main Street and proceeded toward West 80. Details of what occurred are not known, but at some point, Kenneth Nicely pulled a gun on Tony Brown, and the car headed toward the London City Dump, located off of West 80. Just past Shiloh's, up on the hill to the right, is the Mountain View Medical Office Complex. And panning around, you see the land suddenly rise up. That is part of the landfill area, and no doubt a hill of garbage from the old landfill days. No doubt 62 years and a lot of excavating over time has changed things a whole lot, but this hill would have gradually sloped downward, and today this is a high wall area. It's been excavated out. It's about a 50-foot drop straight down there, and 1956 is over in that direction and West 80. But this hillside would have gradually sloped down, and this mountainy high spot in here would have been the landfill. That's exit 41 in London, and Highway West 80 coming toward us. Back in 1958, I'd be standing in the middle of Old West 80. This is the lane now that comes up past Eddie's Auto Sales. And if you look straight across through there, you can still see where it used to tie in straight ahead, way up through there to Old 80, which is now 1956. Back in 1958, this would have been the road to the city dump. In 1958, this would have been West 80. It's Eddie's Auto Sales there on the left. And the mound straight ahead there would have not been here in 1956. It continued straight on, or West 80 as it was then, would have continued straight on. Garbage trucks would have driven this way on West 80 and turned right here at the next right onto Cole Road. This road used to connect over with Robinson Road around Robinson Sausage on the North 25. Seems like I remember a time when you could access the old dump from both 25 and from West 80. But garbage trucks would come this way on Cole Road. And the landfill is in the area right here where this house is. In fact, neighbors have told me that this house here was built on part of the landfill area. And this is this land here back down toward 1956 and 80 would have gradually rolled down through there. Right now there's a high wall that was cut all the way across through here for some of the buildings that have been constructed down there in the last 20 or 30 years. This area, all up in here, this high ground, almost like a mound, was where the landfill was. Over through there, through the green roof, you see a green roof through there, is the Mountain View Medical Office Complex area. The landfill would have been all around it through here. And there's an area over there where it rises up, mounds up that way, drops off down this way. Once they got here to the landfill area, I believe Kenneth Nicely's diabolical plan was already set out in his mind. But he shot and killed Tony Brown and left his body laying, took off in a stolen car. Tony's body was discovered on Monday. That would have probably been when the sanitation workers were back at work again. But by the time Tony's body was discovered here at the old London City landfill, Kenneth Nicely had created a whole lot more havoc. Nicely took off to the southwest. His next stop was Prescott, Arkansas. After having shot and killed Tony Brown on Saturday, he headed southwest, and sometime Sunday evening, Sunday night, Nicely arrived in the small town of Prescott, Arkansas. I'm not exactly sure what happened there, but he was arrested. He was arrested by Officer Ed Verdon, age 32, for reasons that I do not know. Verdon took him to the old Prescott City Jail and somehow managed to overpower Officer Verdon. He got his hands on a gun and he shot and killed Prescott City police officer Ed Verdon in the old city jail. Being a small town, it's very likely that he might have been the only prisoner there, and it's likely that there might not have even been staff there. But nonetheless, shot and killed Officer Verdon. He was on the run again. Patrolman Edward Samuel Verdon was 3 days away from his 37th birthday. He left behind a wife and 3 children. Officer Verdon was also a veteran of World War II. By Monday, Nicely had put over 1,200 miles on that stolen car and had made it to Kingsville, Texas. He got caught for speeding through a school zone and was stopped by a Texas police officer. During that traffic stop, Nicely pulled a a gun on the police officer, and the policeman subsequently shot Nicely in the neck. Although he was seriously injured, Nicely survived, and then Texas authorities began to search to find out who is this guy. So on Saturday around noon, he murdered Tony Brown and headed off southwest. On Sunday night, he murdered Officer Ed Verdon and continued southwest. I believe the guy was probably headed toward Mexico. He finally made it to Kingsville, Texas. And then on Monday, he had the encounter with the Texas cop where he almost met his maker and was shot in the neck. All of this was now within 8 days of his 20th birthday. Freedom was over for Kenneth Nicely. Well, almost over. After conducting some investigation, Texas authorities found out that Nicely was wanted in Kentucky for the murder of Tony Brown. And as the investigation continued, Arkansas authorities had heard about these incidents, and they wanted to question him about the murder of Prescott officer Ed Verdon, which had occurred the day before on Sunday. That investigation led to murder charges. In December of 1958, Kenneth Nicely was found guilty of the murder of Prescott, Arkansas police officer Ed Verdon. On December 22nd, 3 days before Christmas, Nicely was sentenced to life. Today, Kenneth Nicely is 82 years old, and he is still serving a life sentence in the Arkansas State Prison. According to online sources, Nicely is the longest-serving prisoner in Arkansas and the 17th longest-serving prisoner on earth. Nicely was never prosecuted for the murder of Tony Brown. In a rather odd twist to this story, in 1968, when Kenneth Nicely was about 30 years old, he was granted a temporary furlough. Now imagine that. A double murderer serving time for killing a police officer was granted a furlough. That would not happen today. After being granted a temporary furlough, Nicely did not return to prison when he was supposed to. And he stayed on the run for almost 6 years until Kentucky authorities recaptured him on June 27th of 1974, where he was returned to the Arkansas State Prison. My dad was supposed to take that test drive that day until Tony Brown stepped up and volunteered to do it. It makes you stop to think about how a quick decision and a change of plans can alter the future, as it certainly did for the Brown family. My dad, no doubt about it, would have been the victim of Nicely's violence that day. But instead, my mom and dad went on to have me the next March, and then had 3 more kids after that. But one fateful moment of time spelled the end for Tony Brown and caused years of heartache for Maud and Joe and Ted and Virginia Brown. On September the 20th, 1958. Thanks for watching.